One. Ciao and benvenuto. Welcome to the allure of fashion and the intrigue of great books. Are you ready to travel to the heart of Italy, where fashion is one of the essentials to la dolce vita? Settle back with your favorite espresso and enjoy a runway of insights about Italy, fashion, and fiction. I'm your host, Wendy Kendall. I'm a mystery and romance author who loves fashion. The first of my 5 books, Cat Out of the Bag, is available in paperback from harlequin.com and also at Amazon and other online sites. Cat Out of the Bag, Cat is Catherine Watson, purse designer and sleuth. As Catherine investigates the murder of Bayside's mayor at her gala opening, all that glitters is not Judith Lieber. All my books are available at Amazon and other online sites. This holiday season, I also recommend my thrilling romantic suspense, Snow Kiss Cookies to Die For. Desiree, teacher at Bayside's elementary school, began a fun Secret Santa game for her first grade class. Danger hits when each day a secret someone leaves creepy gifts addressed to Desiree in her classroom. Time is ticking before school is out for the holidays, and Desiree's threatening stalker may strike with deadly force. Among several suspects is her romantic new love, Leo, who's on the school's maintenance staff. Oh, wait until you read about their so romantic dates. While the children learn the wonderful lesson of kindness and giving, Desiree is on the edge of her seat. Who is threatening her? Is romantic Leo the one, or is he the stalker? Please check my website, wendywritesbooks.com, for news, including updates on my book 6, A Catherine Watson Mystery, and final edits. Thank you especially to all the readers who've told me how much they've enjoyed my books. My guest today is Judith Works. After earning a law degree, she and her husband moved to Rome, where she worked for the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization for 4 years. After reluctantly saying arrivederci and moving back to the US, they pined to return. Opportunity knocked with the UN World Food Program, leading to 6 more years in the Eternal City. The experiences living in Italy and working for the UN were the genesis of her vibrant memoir, Coins in the Fountain. Now, a new novel, The Measure of Life, is the story of an expat woman's struggles, and it includes life in Rome with all its food and challenges contrasted with island life near Seattle. In her travels, Judith has visited over 100 countries. When not traveling or writing, she volunteers for arts and literary events. Ciao and benvenuto, Judith Works, in pursuit of fashion and fiction.
Hi, Wendy. Ciao. This is very nice. I'm very pleased to be on this program. So ask me a question.
I'm delighted to. Judith, what an adventure to pick up and move from Washington State to Italy. Italian fashion is known for luxury, elegance, and minimalism. What delighted you the most about the fashion change from the Pacific Northwest to fashionable Italy?
Well, anybody who lives in the Pacific Northwest know it's very casual. Sweatshirts are acceptable. And the first thing that I noticed when we got to Rome and we were in the major shopping center, the Via Condotti, is all the women were draped in mink coats, big mink coats with huge cuffs and frills at the bottom. And I don't know how they staggered along with them. And the men were wearing beautifully cut suits and handmade shoes, and they had camel's hair uh, coats draped over their shoulders, and everybody had sunglasses and often perched on the top of their head. And we were very impressed. It didn't look anything like Portland, Oregon. So, so, but of course, my favorite when we got to shopping were shoes. And that was one of the, I'm not such a purse person as you are, but shoes were my thing. And we found so many wonderful places to buy shoes because there were so many small workshops out in the countryside. So we could stop and buy the shoes there. There were outlets for the shoes. And then the big markets always had stalls with last year's fashion for basically nothing. So I came home with many pairs of shoes.
Wow, what a great surprise.
It
That's
was lovely.
fantastic.
Right.
Do you have a favorite designer and what in their designs appeals most to you?
Well, one favorite, although I really don't have anything other than this scarf, which is Valentino, because I love the color red. And so, and he is a Roman designer. Most of the others are in Milan. And but I like for really subtle sophistication, Armani is absolutely it. He's beautifully cut, beautifully designed, timeless. And then another designer I like is Max Mara, and have a camel's hair coat from them because they like that camel color. That's really where Valentino is red, Max Mara is a camel's hair color. So anyway, those are my favorite, but I'll take any of them.
Oh, now I've learned about a new designer. I didn't know about the camel-haired favorite one.
Yeah,
Oh,
Max Mara. Mhm.
very nice. I love learning more about fashion.
Yeah, right.
Now, specific to purses and bags, you know I can't let you get away with this. I love them all, and among my favorites is Prada. I adore high quality, precision crafting, gorgeous colors, speaking of red, and their seamless blend of functionality with beautiful fashion. Do you have a favorite Italian purse designer, and what makes
Well,
them
for
stand out?
the commercial, where you talk about designer ones, this is not as expensive as Prada, but I like Furla, and I have 4 or 5 Furla handbags that we bought in various places in Italy, sometimes at the airport when we're leaving, and but a lot of handbags I bought were again out in the countryside or in small towns in Tuscany or Umbria where we'd go for the weekend. And there was always shops and we had to go in them. And so I still have some of the handbags. And like you say, they are timeless in design and gorgeous quality. So Italians really have ability to work with leather and put out beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work.
Incredible, incredible craftspeople.
Yeah.
Well, Judith, tell us about your new book, Measure of Life. It's set in Rome, and how did your own experiences living in Rome enhance your story?
Well, I lived in Rome. My husband and I lived in Rome for 10 years, 4 years, and then a break in Washington, D.C., and then back for 6 years. And then I came back again several times on consultancies. So, I tried not to put my life in it since I'd already written a memoir, but events kind of creep in from time to time. And one of the things that didn't affect me so much personally, but affected women, other women, was being a trailing spouse. And this is a terrible problem where women have careers, but their husband suddenly, wants to go to Rome, have a job maybe for 4 years, maybe for 2, maybe indefinitely. And they are, trailing spouse is really not a very happy term. And I knew many women who were just lost. And I had my character who ends up in Rome for far longer than she anticipated. She anticipated 2 years and it ended up for 19. And so she has to find a way to live her life, to be creative, to have her own agency, to be independent. But this all happens after she makes a choice, and that choice is to stay. Not that she has an unhappy marriage, but she has children. The children are settled, and so she makes a choice, and then she has to find something to do. And so that certainly reflects the experience of many people I know. So anyway.
Yes, it's very heartfelt story. Tell us a little bit more about your character, Nicole. And just as an aside, too, what fashions would fit her personality and what struggles is she facing?
Well, Nicole is a young woman when the story opens. She's 25. She married an older man, an older widower. He's 18 years older than she is, and she married him because she had suffered a humiliation, and he was there, and it seemed like an excellent idea. It The first year they had it was fine, and then the marriage is deteriorating. She hopes that the move to Rome will help things along, but of course it doesn't. Sometimes I think being an expat makes things worse rather than better. And so she falls into a doomed love affair. And the result of that affair, a child, turns her life into a completely different direction because she had anticipated being in Rome for 2 years. And her husband decides to stay. The children, as I said, don't want to leave. And so she makes a choice, and that choice is to stay. And so she struggles because she doesn't have a good marriage. She struggles because she's lost the love of her life. And she struggles with her oldest daughter that she had when they moved, who was 5, was is never settled right. She's an unhappy child, brilliant at school, but unhappy in her person. And so she has these constant struggles, and she must overcome them to make something of herself. So, what fashion would she like? Well, she's not a very flashy person. So, I would think that some of the more, probably not the most famous designers, but her husband's making a lot of money. He works in the defense industry, and they're making quite a lot of money. So she has money to buy anything she wants, really. So she does dress the children nicely. And uh, but when she moves back to Vashon Island, where she settles after her husband dies, she goes to an event, and it's an art opening, and everybody is dressed in sweatshirts or overalls or very casual clothes. And she shows up in this gorgeous purple silk dress and open toed platform shoes. And everybody stares at her like she's from outer space.
It's such a fun scene.
It is a fun scene. I laughed when I wrote it because I've been to openings at that gallery.
In addition to fashion, we all know Italy for delicious foods. So good. Would you tell us a little about your Italian food shopping and cooking and enjoying in Italy? But also, your character Nicole starts a food blog. Will you tell us about that and maybe read an excerpt about that from your book?
Okay, sure. Uh, when we got there, I went to work, and my husband, who did not speak a word of Italian, and we found an apartment which had nothing in it. He had to it had a sink, and the bathroom was there, and it had a sink in the kitchen. That was it. So we had to buy a refrigerator and a range, and it was quite an adventure. But anyway, he had to learn to shop and to cook. So he's still a family chef. He does wonderful Italian food, mean risotto, and so we have pasta quite frequently. But anyway, it was wonderful, the food shopping, because we shopped mostly at small stalls. There was one that was just a hole in the in the building, just a little tiny shop, and we got to know the vendors, and it was really a different experience. But a funny thing happened to me when I was shopping early on, and I was looking at parsley, and I asked the vendor, I said, "How do you say this in Italian?" And a woman next to me looked at me and scowled and said, "Prezzemolo." So I now know the word now it's the only word I can use. I never think of the word parsley. But of course, we went out to, dinner with friends, and people entertain beautifully there. Very, beautiful food, and they're wonderful delis, and it makes my mouth water to even think of it.
Oh, me too.
So Nicole, who'd always done the cooking at her home with her mother, seemed to be kind of on Valium and kind of zonked out a lot of times. So anyway, she'd always done a lot of cooking. So and she was, of course, cooking to the family there in Rome. So she decided that she would uh, have to do something, as I said earlier. And one of the things was she decided to do a blog. It was a new concept. So I can read about that because it's the start of her cooking adventures. I concentrated on perfecting my Italian and bought a laptop to do newsletters for my English speaking social groups. Including positive stories in the monthly letters was a way to keep my mind busy and entertain others who were sometimes overwhelmed with expat life. My first column was about Roman colors: lavender, wisteria, blue, plumbago, magenta, bougainvillea tumbling over walls, the apricot, tangerine, cantaloupe, and blood orange of building facades, the spinach and eggplant colors of shutters, the scarlet poppies growing in untended spots, the beautiful dark green cypress and umbrella pines. I got loads of good comments. The next month, I wrote about my favorite fountains, the following one about obelisks punctuating the sky over the city, again to applause. I was growing a readership, although taken from a narrow pool. Not long after, I read about a new concept called blogging. Intrigued, I started the process to launch my own blog. After a lot of false starts, I managed to post about the day I brought bread in the bakery a friend, Maggie, recommended, and ended up meeting the old man. I titled it Fiat Panis, Let There Be Bread. Once upon a time, I met an old man out of a fairy tale. He was tiny and perched on a gigantic carved chair where he presided over a treasure trove of books and antiques. And it was the same day I first savored the goodness of real Roman bread. That's crispy brown on the outside and chewy inside. The kind baked in a wood-fired oven, wafting a mouth-watering aroma out the door to compel you to follow the scent back to the bakery where fresh loaves await. But you must hurry or all will be gone before siesta. I squeezed through the crowd toward the clerk to make my selection while imagining ancient Romans clustered at the baker's stall. The baker pulling rounds of whole wheat spiced with poppy and fennel seeds from the hot oven, while his wife handed them to the house slaves who gossiped about their owners and the matrons who gossiped about the neighbors as they handed over a few coins. I included a few colorful photos of the bakery and a loaf of fresh bread on my kitchen table, along with fresco of loaves from the ruins of Pompeii, and I promised to write more about the old man. So that's enough about that. But anyway, later she goes to a cooking school and has some misadventures. So
I love hearing these excerpts. But tell me, what was the biggest challenge you faced writing this novel?
well, listen, I will say the setting was no problem because I love to write about Rome, and I know Vashon Island, so uh, that was not really an issue. I mean, I had to actually in Rome, I had to decide what I wasn't going to write about because there's so many places you can that attract your eye and your attention and your interest. So really, is to develop Nicole's character. Who is she? What does she want? Why does she want it? And what happens to her when she's faced with adversity? And so I think that's a challenge for any writer. So I would say that's the biggest, to structure the novel and to have it develop her and her life.
Well, I would say you definitely met that challenge and definitely well overcame it. Would you please treat us to another reading from your book, Measure of Life?
Okay. This is about a Roman church. And about halfway through the book, her husband dies. And I won't tell you how or why. Right. Right. Uh, her youngest daughter, has come to Rome to help pack up. Hon, I don't know about you, but I need some time to think before I continue packing. Do you mind if I go for a walk? Sure, we can pack later today. I got a message from Trisha, my roommate. A water pipe burst in the apartment building, but our stuff's okay. And she got us tickets to the next Husky game. Everyday life, I would try for a taste of the positives of my Roman life and be a casual observer of the passing scene to fix it in my mind before I departed forever. I set out to put my financial worries, along with Martin and Sophie, out of my mind by turning to the attention of the old streets, artisan shops, and palazzi, turned into museums when the powerful family that owned them died out. I walked along the old streets in the Centro Storico, the desiccated leaves of the plane trees crunching underfoot. The sound made me think of stepping on dead beetles. When I came to San Ignazio, I followed the stream of visitors filing up a ramp to enter the church without thinking. I opened the battered wooden side door marked Ingresso. Huddles of nuns and knots of tour guides talked to their charges as all craned necks upward to gawk at the ecstatic images of saints, angels, and plump naked little boys with rosy bottoms painted to spill over the ceiling's edges as they floated effortlessly in the heavens. As I passed a row of confessionals where the faithful waited their turn to relieve their burdens of sin, I remembered I'd read naked boys represented life force and sex, no doubt the subject of most confessions. It would have been mine too if I'd ever dared speak through the screen to the confessor. I entered a side chapel to evade the crowds and massage my neck, but here too there was no peace. Swirling gold leaf carvings like wild vines climbed the wall above a small altar. The Baroque frenzy of tendrils captured ornate glass containers holding bits of long dead holy people. I leaned closer to peer into the vials. Were they truly relics? Guilty for my lack of piety, I deposited €1 in the offering box below a glass case with a finger bone resting on a silk pillow with a yellowed piece of paper pinned below. Latin was written in tiny faded copper plate script identifying some saint whose name I couldn't decipher because a blot like a tear stain obscured half the inscription. Dozens of silver hearts on the wall surrounded the altar, but the combination of bone fragments with disembodied hearts gave no comfort. I remembered a quote from medieval times. Rome is a city of echoes, the city of illusions, and the city of yearning. The overwrought atmosphere made me eager to leave Rome, enough of constant echoes of the past with its illusions, although yearning for a lost love would continue.
Mm. Oh my goodness. It's such rich prose. I love it. Thank you for a great reading. You chose two very distinct settings for your book. Can you contrast for us Rome versus Vashon Island near Seattle? And also tell us what each represented to Nicole.
Pardon me. Well, Vashon Island is, although you can see Seattle, is rural. A lot of people used to have summer, maybe some do have summer places there that they would go over from the city. A lot of farms, lavender farms. It has the little town of Vashon has no signal at the intersection. It's just a four-way stop. And it's quiet, very, very quiet. It represents really, after all her worries and her setbacks, it represents the beginning of a new life, of peace, of some hope that things will improve as she has discovered some very unpleasant things about her husband. And so it has a purpose of being very positive. Rome, as a young person, she wanted to travel. She longed for adventure, and she got it. She encouraged her husband to take this job offer, which came along because an Italian defense firm had bought out the company he was working for. And it's sophisticated. It's very noisy. It's not very clean. They're famous for not having good garbage service, which is very bad in the summer when people put fish leftovers in the garbage. And it's crowded. this coming year, which is a pilgrimage year for those who are Catholics, they expect 35 million people. Rome has a population, I think, of about 2 million. So it's just overwhelming. It wasn't when we were there, but I mean, there was plenty of tourism, but I just cannot imagine it. But it's full of history. Vashon has very little, as you can imagine. Uh, so the contrast is for this excitement of constant assault on your senses of the food, of the noise of the traffic, of people, of footsteps, clomping along. It's never anything quiet. And but it has a lot of sophistication in the sense of the dress, uh, art events. There's so many wonderful museums, and and the opera. And so you have this vibrant, lively, but stressful, because it's wonderful to visit, but can be very stressful to live there. Their bureaucracy is complicated, and there's a language barrier and that sort of thing. So you've got that contrast. So she goes to Vashon, and the only reason she goes there, she has no money, is because her husband had bought a rental, an old home, and it was never rented out. So she did have a place to go. So that's what the contrast is why I contrasted the two sites.
And it's just so beautifully and vividly done too.
Well, thank you.
It's wonderful. And now I want to talk a little bit about another distinct setting, Milan, the fashion capital of the world. It's the city where the police wear Armani. Milan's capacity for chic began in the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance, when it became known for purchasing luxury goods. A center of trade due to its geographical position, its takeover by the powerful House of Sforza in 1450 established Milan's position as a prosperous city known for its silk processing. This quickly evolved into more high-quality products such as lace, jewelry, and hats. The city's notoriety for the finer things in life quite literally helped it make a name for itself, because the name Milan was inspired by the English word Milaner, meaning fine wares. In 1865, the Bocconi brothers opened the first shop in Italy to sell ready-to-wear clothing. A few years later, in Milan, they opened the country's first department store. It revolutionized clothing purchases, selling luxury products without the high prices. By the 1950s, major Italian cities had each established a unique fashion identity. Rome was haute couture, Florence known for handmade clothing, and Milan renowned for ready-to-wear clothes instead of tailor-made. In the 20th century, Milan became the major force of fashion media, with the new Vogue Italia establishing headquarters there in 1961. As the influence of the magazines grew, designers, photographers, models, and writers flocked to Milan, all vying to be part of the fashion network. Milan became a trendsetter. In the 1970s, Versace and Armani stormed their way onto the fashion scene in Milan. Their clothes showcased an exciting polarity. Versace's revealing cuts, eye-catching prints, and bold colors contrasted with Armani's minimalist style. Their rivalry created a popular saying, Armani dresses the wife, Versace dresses the mistress. Milan's Fashion Week launched into international limelight. It was an event attended by the movers and shakers of the industry and beyond, everyone clamoring to witness the latest from Italy's hottest labels. Milan had made its mark, officially awarded the title Fashion Capital of the World by the Global Language Monitor in 2009. Today, the city is home to over 12,000 fashion companies and houses the headquarters of most major Italian labels. Now, a little less fashionable, but very important. Just briefly, Judith, would you tell us just a little bit about the work the United Nations does in Rome?
I will, but first, I just wanted to mention we were in Rome, I mean, in Milan for Fashion Week, and it was so interesting to see the people. And but what I loved is we went in one of their most famous department stores, La Rinascente, and the sweets department, the chocolate shop, had this huge display of life-size chocolate shoes.
Oh, that is incredible. Oh, what a great experience. That's
I
amazing.
think it was air conditioned, so they didn't melt. Anyway, back to the United Nations. Well, I first went to work for Food and Agriculture Organization. It's commonly abbreviated as FAO, or Italians call it La FAO. And they are far different than the World Food Program. They do a lot of uh, assists with countries for like land tenure agreements, fishing agreements, treaties, that sort of thing, demonstration products, food standards, a lot of food standards. And they're rather laid back. They were when I was there. And one thing they're most famous for, the building was to be, which is all white marble, was to be the headquarters for Mussolini's African Empire during World War II. And it was built in the 1930s. And it has a famous terrace. And when you go to that terrace, which led to long coffee breaks, you look all over Rome. It just was a fabulous panorama. So I left when I came back. I went to work for World Food Program, which is an entirely different organization. It's on the ground, boots on the ground, delivery of food aid, and the delivery. Well, you've probably read about Gaza and the attempts to get food in. The same with Sudan. They are often in wartime situations. The work can be very dangerous, sometimes fatal, and the people who work for there tend to be quite adventurous. They tend to want to be out in these dangerous places. They're looking for adventure, and it's a very active 24/7 organization. So they're entirely different in tone, I would say, and in mission.
Wow. Well, Judith Works, thank you so much for sharing this fashion and fiction fun with us. And listeners, you will want to check out Judith's website, judithworks.net, and find out more about her books, short stories, and fabulous photos gallery. And you're invited to my website, wendywritesbooks.com, to see my books and explore more fashion and fiction. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. Like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And join me next time for the allure of fashion and the intrigue of great books.